Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We are so excited that you are here with us this beautiful Tuesday morning. As you are coming in, if you would like to enable closed captions or subtitles, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and I will put those instructions in the chat. And while you're filing in, we always love to get to know a little bit about the people who are joining us. And unfortunately, a virtual environment doesn't allow us to interact with one another, but we still want to know a little bit about you. So as you're coming in, share with us a cool bird that you have seen so far this winter. What cool bird have you seen so far this winter? And even if you don't know what it's called, what did it look like? Maybe we can figure it out together. But we'll wait just a couple of minutes to allow folks to join in before we go ahead and get started. And again, if you would like to enable closed captions or subtitles, you can click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So I can get started first. So one of my favorite birds that I saw this winter was actually yesterday. My cat and I were watching some birds in a tree outside the window, and a yellow-bellied sapsucker, which is a woodpecker, was right there on the tree. And then a brown-headed nuthatch chased it away. It was very interesting interaction. Feel free again in the chat to share any cool bird sightings that you've had this winter. Winter is an excellent time for birds. And we will get started in just 1 minute with our special guest who will be talking all about her incredible career in environmental education and biology. And again, we are so glad that you are here.
I can share a bird that I have seen, or a lot of birds I've seen. On a trip in January, saw so many rusty blackbirds all in one place. And it wasn't just one, it was like 50 of them all just sitting there. And I had never seen one before. So to see that many was really, really cool.
Rusty blackbirds are incredible. Blackbirds in general are such a really cool species, variety of species to have, especially in the winter when they travel in really large flocks. Alrighty, so we have Brian who said he had an Eastern Phoebe nest under his deck until a few months ago. That is cool. Eastern Phoebes are one of our favorite birds for sure. Very charismatic birds. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and without further ado, get started. We are so excited that you all have joined us for the next installation in our Conservation Career Series, where we have experts from across the state of Georgia who are sharing their conservation career path with you and giving you an inside look at what their careers have entailed. And so today's special guest is Kiana Leveritte, and Kiana is an Illinois native who has always strived to find a place for herself in the outdoors. She's currently the Community Outreach Coordinator here at Georgia Audubon and has a passion for breaking down barriers for diverse communities surrounding the outdoors and recreation. In her spare time, she studies herbalism and environmental advocacy, and her main goal is to inspire others to see the world and each other differently. And so we are so excited to have her with us today, and I'm thrilled to present my coworker and friend to you. So Kiana, feel free to go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Karina, for that wonderful introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right. All right, so this is going to be a journey through my conservation career. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll get to them. A little bit about me. So I am from Illinois originally, and I grew up in the urban Midwest. So it wasn't necessarily the place where you saw a lot of farms, but it was a place that was kind of in between where the farms are and where Chicago was. And I did not have very many environmental role models or people that I could say that I looked to as saying like, oh, I want to be like that. It was kind of just an idea I had about what I wanted to do with my life and how But at the time, I really didn't know how I was going to accomplish it. Most of what I saw of the outside world and exploring were things that I saw on a television screen. I definitely was a National Geographic kid. I loved watching almost everything on Animal Planet just because I always loved learning something new about animals or the outdoors or just anything that was different. And most of the time that I did spend outside, I was walking to school or taking walks with my dad. That was a favorite thing of mine, and going to summer camp during the summer when I wasn't in school. So not a lot of camping or outdoor experience, but I knew that it was someplace that I wanted to be. So when I went off to school, I decided to go to Tuskegee University. It's an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university in the state of Alabama. It was established in 1881, and it is a USDA land grant institution, which means that when it was first founded, it received funding from the USDA in order to establish the school, specifically to give people opportunities for careers in agriculture, soil science, and environmental science, and animal science, of course. And I was there for 5 years. It was founded by Booker T. Washington, and it was some of the best years of my life. I learned a lot about myself, but the main thing I learned is that your trajectory can change. You can start off thinking that you're going to do one thing and end up doing another. I mean, I changed my mind so many times. At first, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian for domestic pets. Then I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, which is an animal doctor, for those that are curious, for ruminant animals, which means animals that have two stomachs. So think of like cows and goats. I also thought about being a veterinarian for exotic felines because I love tigers and big cats. I think they're so interesting, especially since we don't see very many of them often. So I thought it would be cool to go overseas and study those things. And then I wanted to be a wildlife biologist because I had a professor tell me that a wildlife biologist, depending on how much experience they have, can do the same things a vet can do. So a vet plus was what I thought a wildlife biologist was. And I was all for it. And then my trajectory completely changed, and I thought I wanted to be a horticulturist, which is somebody who works with plants and figures out how they grow and how best they can grow. Then I wanted to be a conservationist. And I went to my mentor at the time, and she looked at me and said, "What kind of career is that? What does that look like?" And I didn't know the answer. So then I just decided that I just want to inspire somebody. I just want to make a change somehow, some way. And in my mind, I thought if I can get people to care about all these things that I find to be so interesting and so cool, maybe they'll think they're interesting, and maybe they'll live their lives differently too. So I not only changed my mind, I changed my major more than once. I started off thinking going to school to receive a bachelor's of science in animal science with the goals of going to veterinary school. And Tuskegee had a veterinary school on the campus, so it seemed like a very great idea. Then when I changed my major to wildlife biology, it was going to be a bachelor's of science dual and a master's program for wildlife biology, and I was going to be going to 2 schools at the same time, Tuskegee and University of Florida. But that just didn't seem like the right fit for me either. So then finally, I settled on a bachelor's of science, environmental science, natural resource management with a minor in wildlife biology. And that felt the most comfortable to me. And during this time, because I changed my major so many times, I took a lot of classes that were related to animal science, that were related to soil science and water science. I was learning about everything because they were running out of classes to give me. So I ended up taking classes that were actually meant for grad students starting in my junior year. And by the time I finished, I had basically run through most of the grad school curriculum for that major. So the first job I had on this journey of mine was as a safe summer education counselor. It was a program up in Illinois in a school, in one of the largest school districts in the state. And it was created for I basically created age adjustable summer curriculum for grades K through 6. Those are the kids that I saw on the regular basis. And at the location that I worked at, because there were multiple locations, I dealt with 75 to 100 students daily between the ages of kindergartners to 6th graders. And I would have to develop programs and activities to not only stimulate them mentally, but also that would work for kindergartner, how I could fix it to work for a 1st grader or a 3rd grader, or how to make it challenging for a 6th grader. And I was also responsible for water sport activities and the K through 2 students. So water sport activities for me were, because I was a lifeguard at the time, I would do dam jumping, which is jumping off of a dam. I would do canoeing and river walking. It was a lot of fun. And of course, regular swimming too. But the one thing that I learned, which was the biggest lesson I took from this, is that the true value of a teacher, because I would end up spending so much time with the students, more so than they were spending at home. They would see me 5 days out of the week. And during that time, I would learn so much about them, and they would open up, and you really realize how much of a difference you can make when you're just having a good conversation or having fun. And it really makes me appreciate the teachers that I had when I was growing up. The second job that I want to talk about with you guys, I was working for the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. And the Alabama Department of Environmental Management is up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I worked as a research and field scientist. So I worked in the lab and I worked outside, and our range of the field was the entire state. So sometimes I would drive all the way to the edge of the state, almost in another state, and then other times we would stay in Montgomery. Sometimes we would go to Troy or Birmingham, or we would travel to Macon County or Lee County, and really or Tuscaloosa, and see what we could find, or even Huntsville. It was really, really fun. And working as a field scientist, I did a lot of things around in the field office, but the thing that I dealt with the most are these organisms right here. These are called macroinvertebrates. Oftentimes, if you look closely in a creek or a body of water, you can see these animals depending on how shallow the water is. And I would go out and I would sample streams and I would collect them and see how many of each one that I could find, because they tell a story depending on what you find. But more on that in a second. So what work looked like for me, sometimes I was on a boat, but I had a lot of jobs. During this time, I would do water quality sampling. I also did electrofishing. I also did macroinvertebrate sampling, which is what I just talked about, ambient air quality sampling, and water treatment inspections. So for water quality sampling, I would go out and we would really test the water and bring the water back to the lab to see how healthy the water quality was. And we would also collect macroinvertebrates, because the macroinvertebrates, depending on what you find, they can tell you about how healthy the water is. Because just like how we have tolerance levels for spicy food or for sweet things or for savory things, these insects, these organisms have a tolerance for pollution in the water. So if you find ones that are really sensitive to poor water quality, that means that water is good. But if you find macroinvertebrates that can handle anything, then maybe you should wonder about how healthy the water quality actually is. I also do ambient air quality sampling, which often involved contraptions that looked like this one in the top left corner. And we would go and measure the air for pollution. And in the state of Alabama, their air quality levels change the amount of funding that some places are able to receive. So they have to, as a city, keep their air up to a certain quality and a certain level of pollution. So that definitely was something that we had to check. And we didn't have to check it often, but we did check it every few weeks. And then also with water inspection, I would go to factories and different plants that actually dump the wastewater that after it's purified into large bodies of water and make sure that those large bodies of water weren't being polluted. Most of my time, however, was spent in labs that looked just like that one in the bottom left corner. So a big part of this journey for me was when I worked on the Konza Prairie Ecological Research Fellowship. And I worked on what is called an LTER, which is a long-term ecological research project. And I focused on ornithology. That was my choice. And ornithology is the study of birds. And the topic, this is a mouthful, was the effects of patchburn grazing techniques on the nest survival rates of grassland songbirds in the presence of predation and parasitism. Whew, that was a mouthful. But essentially, my job involved finding birds on this very, very vast prairie that had different areas and different parts that were all treated on different kinds of patchburn grazing sequences. So some places would be burned every year. Other places we burned every 2 years or every 3 years or every 4 years. And the longer you wait, the more that grows. The more often you burn, the less that can grow. So you might see something that looks like where all these cows are, and they were cows roaming around the entire time, and they would look at you as if, hey, what are you doing here? But I would try to move past it and do the best that I could to do my job. And there's not a lot of diversity in the structure of the space. And in grasslands, a lot of people may not realize this if you've never been to a grassland, but in grasslands, because there aren't a lot of trees, the birds nest on the ground. And in a place like Kansas, which is where this research took place, a lot of people are farming and using farmland. So they have to create space for and habitat for birds while also creating good space for their cows to graze and good space for them to have their crops. And we wanted to see if how we burn our properties can really change how successful these organisms who have to live in these spaces survive. And when a bird has a good nest, it's not as predated, or if it picks a good spot, it's not as predated, meaning that predators like badgers or snakes or even coyotes aren't jumping into the nest and making sure that, or eating the eggs. And then parasitism is another issue, because where there are cows, there are these other birds called cowbirds, and cowbirds lay their eggs in other birds' nests. And so if we would check to see how many cowbird eggs we would find in the nest of another bird. And the bird that I focused on the most is this bird in the center, this one right here. This is a dick sissel, and it has a call that sounds like dick sissel, sissel, sissel. It's very, very cool. The other bird that I focused on was a meadowlark, although they are very, very good at hiding their nests, and they're also very, very grumpy when you pick them up. So during these times, I would travel out with a group, or sometimes I would travel by myself, and I would literally sit and wait and listen. I did a lot of birding by ear. This is actually how I learned to bird by ear. And I would try to listen to where the birds were. And then once I locked on one, I would go and wait and see if I could find the nest. And sometimes when I find a nest, I would find a nest that had all blue eggs, kind of like the eggs that you see in the top right corner. But every once in a while, I might find these pale speckled eggs, which belong to cowbirds. And a cowbird is that bird in the bottom left corner. And the cowbird babies are the babies that you see in both of these nests. And the issue with them is that they hatch faster, and the parents feed them sooner. And oftentimes they can even push the other birds or the other eggs out of the nest. And even if those other eggs do hatch, the birds themselves might starve. And so that was what I was trying to find out there for most of my time. But when I wasn't doing that, I would go herping, and I love herping. We would find things like the eastern king snake you see in the center, or skinks, which is the reptile that you see me smiling at on the right, or even working with coyotes and seeing just how far they travel and what their territories look like in the grasslands, which is what we were doing on the left. So this is a video of a nest that I was able to find. And even though there were no dickcissel eggs in this nest, this is a dickcissel nest, the bird really didn't seem to mind. The mother still fed those babies up until all of them flushed that nest. So the next part of my conservation career was me coming on to Atlanta Audubon as an intern. And I interned through the Green Youth Foundation, which is a local Atlanta organization that helps students, particularly students of color, find spaces in the environmental field, whether that be in policy, whether that be on the federal level, or whether that be on the nonprofit space in conservation. They help us find conservation careers. And this was a really great opportunity for me. And I came and joined this wonderful organization for the first time as an intern, and my focus was conservation. So as a part of this internship, I was over a project along with a coworker of mine at Washington Park on the west side. If you live on the west side, we have done a little bit of work out there. And it was a space where we wanted to install a pollinator garden. And with working with the Friends group and the local community, we were able to pick out good plants, pick out where we were going to plant these plants, and also share this space with the community and local organizations that could help them maintain such a great space. And Washington Park has its own amazing history. If you've never been there, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And then the next part of my conservation career was me working for the USFS. What does that stand for? That stands for the U.S. Forest Service under the USDA. And I was the partnership coordinator for the Georgia Mountain Children's Forest Network. That is a mouthful of words, but essentially I helped to coordinate and facilitate partnerships with the Forest Service, with local organizations, other conservation organizations, in order to give out information and really share the joy of the forest with youth, as well as explain how to be safe in these spaces, how to recreate in these spaces, and create opportunities for them to be in these spaces as well. So I was stationed at the Forest Supervisor's Office in Gainesville. So for those that aren't familiar, Georgia has the Chattahoochee National Forest is in North Georgia. It is so large. And I was stationed at the Forest Supervisor's Office, which essentially is the office where the person who's in charge of all the forest rangers is. And I worked in an department that specialized in outreach, which was a lot of fun for me. I got to, one, be outside all the time, and two, I got to travel all over North Georgia and visit so many different communities and different schools and talk to people from things ranging from forest fires to bear safety to bats to how to camp, what to do when you get lost. It was all a lot of fun. So I got to touch a lot of people in a way in which they now look at the outdoors differently. Or at least if I show that I'm willing to be vulnerable and even try things that I had never tried before, that hopefully it inspires them to look at things differently. So some things that I would do, some specific activities I would do in this space is I would lead field trips to the Lenfoot Hike-In with teachers from all over the state in a program called Forest for Every Classroom. We would do school programs ranging from so many topics. There were some instances where I even got to travel along with the U.S. Forest Service biologists and conservationists to observe what an actual forest burn looks like, because in some ways we burn the forest in order to get rid of any invasive plants in the underbelly so that certain plants that need to grow and need to survive, especially for conservation purposes and creating habitat, make sure that they're okay. And I would also help supervise youth conservation corps activities in which they would do things like build trails. A lot of people don't realize that when you're in a forest or you're on a trail and you wonder how so well it's built, that most of these trails, if not all of these trails, were hand dug out by somebody, by a group of people, and that it took a lot of work. And there are youth in the state that are also willing to do these things. I would get to visit extension activities in so many different counties and just talk to kids and play games. I would lead hikes every once in a while for different communities, whether it would be a women's trail fest or a youth group that just wants to get outside. And the most recent part of my conservation career is me coming back to now Georgia Audubon as the education program coordinator. And as an education program coordinator, essentially what I did was I helped to organize and facilitate education programs centered around birds for all ages in partnership with the director of education, Melanie Furr. And I got to have a lot of unique experiences. We have a lot of cool programs that different age groups can take advantage of, one of which is called AUE, and that stands for Atlanta Urban Ecologists. It's a program for ages, we're 8th graders through 12th graders, and we connect with different conservation organizations all over the city and just open ourselves up to new experiences and new information. And some of these pictures are from some of the trips that we've taken to different areas of the city, different parks that maybe you've never been to. I got to hold, as well as partnering with other organizations. Some of the organizations that we got to partner with were like the Amphibian Foundation, Blue Heron Nature Preserve, Mason Mill Park, the Atlanta Coyote Project. It goes WAWA, which is the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance. All of these amazing conservation organizations doing great work. And sometimes I myself, because I love reptiles as well, I would also get to hold and even feature some of these animals and share them with people. So in some of these pictures, I'm holding reptiles. One of them is a monitor. His name was Parth. He was pretty cool. And the other one, I believe is an indigo snake, but I'm sure that Crystal Mandika, who is a part of the Amphibian Foundation, where these snakes come from, would probably tell me differently. We got to travel everywhere. I got to bird with other people and share that experience. And really the thing that this organization and this part of my job has taught me the most is that Atlanta is way bigger than we think it is. And it's up to us to really explore it for what it is and learn what we can, where we can. And really, you never know what's in your local park. Some other programs that I got to take part in are our homeschool programs, our Taking Wing program, which involves training teachers in bird-centered curriculum to bring that back to whatever kind of students that they teach. and also our CSS TV program, which is connecting students to STEM through birds, in which we install pollinator gardens on the campuses of schools. I know that through these partnerships, we've been able to make meaningful connections, and connections are what I'm all about, because if I can connect people to the outdoors, I could be speaking to 100 people, and it would only take me really resonating with one person for it to matter. So now I am the Georgia Audubon Community Outreach Coordinator, and I work hand in hand with Karina Newsom, who you guys have all met. And essentially, it is my job to kind of be the facilitator of anyone that wants to partner with us for a program, for an opportunity, for outreach, or otherwise. And I'm having a ball because I get to be out in the community. I get to speak to people and share my love of it all with people as well. Because at the end of the day, I just want to inspire somebody. And the last part of my conservation career is entrepreneurship, because I'm also working on my own projects with a group that me and my friends started called Maker's House. And we're looking to also share all of our loves of the outdoors with everyone. So if I had any tidbits from me about conservation careers or careers in general, or really just life, the first one is that it's a journey and not a race. And you shouldn't really judge everyone else's success by how successful you'll be, because how you live your life and the pace at which things come into your life are purposeful and should be celebrated however they come. Your journey may be non-linear, and that's okay, meaning that it might zigzag. You might start off thinking that this is what I want to do, but it's okay to change your mind and to do something else. It's okay to do the things that you enjoy, even if it doesn't seem like a straight line. Life will never be a straight line, so we should always just try to enjoy whatever opportunities come to us, which also means finding mentors and friends that both support your dreams, but also help you to push to challenge yourself. So I would find mentors in people that do the things that I'm interested in, or have advice or ideas on how I can grow, and to surround yourself with friends that can challenge you and help you push yourself, who motivate you while also motivating themselves. Make the most of every opportunity, no matter how small it is. You never know how significant it can be to the people around you, whether that's you talking to somebody or making a difference, or that's an interview or an experience. Make the most out of it, because opportunities can come multiple times or they can come once. So if you walk into every opportunity treating it as if it's the best opportunity, then you'll never be disappointed. And do what you love, and love what you do. I think that's the most important thing when picking a career. Everyone wants to pick a career that makes a lot of money or that affords them a certain lifestyle. But I think that if you do what you enjoy, your life will never go out of style. So that being said, that is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you guys so much. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I'm sitting here taking notes about your advice on careers, and that was such an incredible presentation. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, learning about all that you've done. You are a skilled educator, if I could just say that, a very skilled educator. And so we're so lucky to have you and to be able to learn from you. And we do have a few questions for you. So let me start with the Q&A. So Isaac asks, so referring back to your college experience, after trying all these classes in different subjects, how did you know inspiring people was the thing you wanted to do? How did you decide this is it? I have so many things I love about the environment and animals. I find it hard to try and choose one path to go down.
So it's funny you should say that, because my advice, or really, in a way, I kept changing because I kind of wanted to do everything. And I don't think that you are wrong for wanting to do so many things. You just have to kind of realize that you don't have to do all of them at once. You can do one thing that you're passionate about, whether it be water, or whether it be cats, or whether it's birds, and let that be a period in your life. And then you can move on to something else that also brings you just as much joy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that when I was in school at the time, learning all of these things, inspiring people kind of came to me, because out of all that I was learning, that was ultimately, no matter what I did, that was more important. I changed from being a veterinarian because although I love animals and I love the idea of helping them and taking care of them, I also really, really care about the environment and really, really care about this world that we call ours, and treating it like it's ours, and kind of inspiring other people to live their lives differently and care about it. And I said that if I can find you something that makes outside interesting to you, then you'll care about what's going on out there. And if you care, then you're gonna start making sure the people around you care too. And then it's a trickle down effect. The next thing you know, you have a whole lot more people that care. And creating that inspiration is really what drives me.
Incredible. That's beautiful. Thank you for that question, Isaac, and Kiana for that answer. We have a question from Mazzy, who said, how well did Tuskegee prepare you for your career? Did they directly connect you with any of the opportunities you took advantage of?
Yes. So I definitely think that Tuskegee prepared me for my career, absolutely. Because it was a USDA land grant institution, almost all HBCUs are, we had very strong connections to the USDA, the NRCS, MANARS, which is Minorities in Agriculture, Resources and Natural Agriculture and Natural Resource Sciences, and so many different organizations and so many meetings that I was able to step into simply because my professor knew the director of this organization. So it's almost like I was able to receive adequate advice about my career, and then they were able to directly connect me with people that had either done that career or had worked in that career. A lot of the teachers I had were former federal employees, whether they worked for NRCS, whether they had worked for the Forest Service. And so the advice they were giving was both real world advice and life experience, which kind of also helped because yes, you can have the practical experience to have these jobs, but sometimes you need like the less non-practical experience, like how am I supposed to act in this interview, or how do I approach them about this question, or what's the journey from this point to this point in these careers. And it also was not just federal careers. We would have career fairs all the time and talks all the time. We had a business conference center on our campus, so they were constantly having conferences for farmers, conferences for agriculturists and environmental scientists, and showing research. A lot of people don't know that there's a lot of agricultural historical research that has happened at Tuskegee. And at this point, I would say that they definitely adequately prepared me because their history in that subject has always been very strong. So I felt very well supported and always felt like I could answer or ask any question to anyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that question, Mazzy and Kiana. Someone asked, do you feel the need to get your master's degree?
Do I feel the need to get my master's degree? I don't feel the need to get my master's degree. However, unrelatedly, I still want my master's degree because I love to learn. I love to learn new things and be challenged and challenge myself. And I would say one thing that I've taken away from this field is that although a master's degree can help you a lot, what was really valued the most is practical real life experiences. So don't be afraid if you're interested in a subject to start now, because any work that you do in this field can count toward that experience of understanding that career field that much more, because you'll be able to jump right into tasks faster because you're already familiar with it. And it's important to have that practical knowledge and to challenge yourself, but it's not required for every kind of conservation career. So always as long as you're always doing what's challenging to you and constantly challenging yourself, I feel like that is the most important experience. But if you feel like you need a master's degree, or better yet, not that you feel like, you should never feel like you need one. If you want a master's degree, you should get it because you want to get one. And that's why I want to get one, because there's so much I want to learn about. I feel like I might get multiple master's degrees, but that's just me. It doesn't have to be for everybody.
Awesome. And one thing I want to say, just in case we have anyone in the audience for whom this applies, if you're someone looking to go to grad school, master's or PhD, and do research in biology or wildlife, do not pay to go to school. Research degrees are not like medical degrees where people are, taking out loans, and it's not like undergrad where a lot of people are taking out loans for financial aid. When you're going to grad school, master's or PhD, you want to have a fellowship or an assistantship, something that covers the cost of your schooling and pays you a stipend. And that is what most everybody is doing. Myself, anyone who goes to grad school. So just know that. And if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to us and we can talk more about it.
Absolutely. Although I don't have a master's degree yet, I have done extensive research on master's degrees, so I'm open to answering any questions about that process, whether it be applying or even reaching out for assistantships, fellowships, or funded research.
Thank you so much, Kiana. Mazzy had another question. This relates back to the macroinvertebrate sampling that you were talking to us about. As it relates, you were mentioning, depending on the kind of species diversity you see in macroinvertebrates in a body of water, that can tell you about the health of the water. They asked, does this also apply to macroinvertebrates in soil? Can they be used to predict soil quality?
Yes. That's the short answer. I would say that macroinvertebrates are always a good indicator of the health of a habitat, just as much as I also would say birds are a good indicator of the health of a habitat. And so you kind of have to, one thing that I like to do is when I go into a new space, I open my ears and I ask myself, do I hear anything? If I go to the water, do I see anything? Is it moving or is it still? Is there nothing going on or is there a lot going on? And then if there's nothing going on, then I have to ask myself, what's wrong here? Is it too dry? Is it because there are too many? Is it because it's connected to a sewage system? Is it because there's something in the aquifer underneath that soil that's changing the way that these organisms are interacting with it? Because there are organisms such as dragonflies that are very, very sensitive to poor quality. And then there are animals like crayfish, which a lot of us, some people even eat, that will live in any sort of environment, water environment. They can handle a lot of pollution. And I think that soil is exactly the same way, just as I believe that air is also exactly the same. So you kind of have to look at what's around and ask yourself, what's missing here? And if there is stuff missing, that'll tell you a little bit about where you are.
Incredible, Kiana, thank you so much. I actually had a question that I wanted to run by you. So when it comes to mentors, sometimes it can feel difficult to find mentors. It can feel, a little maybe even intimidating when you're someone who's in high school or you're an undergrad and you're wanting to connect with someone who's already a professional in the field, who has a job or is doing what you want to do in some way. How do you find a mentor? How did you find yours?
So I found my mentor, it's kind of like trying on shoes. You kind of have to see if they're the right fit for your personality, because a lot of professionals, there are some professionals that take themselves very seriously and they expect to be approached in a certain way. And then there are others that really want to be treated like they're part of the family or that they're familiar to you, like a friend, and less of like a parental relationship. And for me, when I found my mentor, first of all, my mentor was on campus. He was an extension agent for the USDA. I believe he still works for the USDA. His name is Rodney Stone, shout out to Stone. And he really, I would always go to him. He was the person on our campus that was the go-to in the department if you wanted to find a summer job or a summer career. And he would always give us advice and even tell us about his personal experiences and would be honest and say this isn't a good opportunity. This is a good opportunity. And him being that intentional about my dreams and what I wanted for myself and kind of directing me toward those goals led me to believe like, oh, like maybe I can like really have good conversations with him about like stuff that's not just directly related to a position somewhere. I can talk to him about like this issue that I'm having with this professor. I think it's all about figuring out like how much you trust somebody and how much you feel like you can learn from them. And sometimes, especially if you are in high school and you may not know of anyone that's in this field, I would consider talking to your teachers, but also looking at like local organizations, institutions, whether that be like the local animal hospital. When I was in high school and I thought I wanted to be a vet, my dad like shamelessly drove me up to the veterinary hospital and asked like, hey, can she just sit down and have conversations with you? And it was the weirdest like first introduction to a mentor, but it really did help, because oftentimes there are people out there that are looking to help you, but they're waiting for you to ask. Because absolutely. I can be a mentor, but no one's asked me. Karina could also be a mentor, but if somebody asks her, I think it's all about having that moment of vulnerability, because ultimately a mentor is somebody that you want to grow from and someone who's going to challenge you in what your goals are and really push you to not to do what they want you to do, but to do what you want to do at the best possible level of you doing it.
Yes, that's incredible. And one thing that's kind of emerged, honestly, in the last, 5 or so years, a lot of people, especially people in the sciences, and even like, for example, Black scientists, like a lot of people are on social media quite a bit and using their social media platform as a way to reach people. And so if you are like a young person and you are maybe like trying to think of ways to connect or even learn about who's out there and what's out there, try Instagram. Like, I promise you, I do it. I do the same thing. Like I regularly will search on Instagram, like hashtag Black biologist or hashtag Black carnivore ecologist, whatever I'm looking for. If I'm looking for someone that's a role model for me, or if I just want to connect with someone about what they're doing and learn more, social media is actually a really powerful tool. So if that's a medium that you use, I would encourage you to consider it, because you might be surprised just how much you can find there. And you get to see pictures of people and look at their life, so you can get a better idea before you even contact them,
And I feel like another great thing about it is that a lot of social media is very personal and like has a very like personal touch to it, especially for people. And so you can kind of get a closer eye as far as expressing that vulnerability, whether you want to meet this person or talk to this person about anything. You can tell a lot by what their social media looks like and say like, oh, is this right for me, or should I like go look at somebody else? How does this make sense?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Mazzy just put in the Q&A, she said, I would love for you to be my mentor. How can I get in contact with you? So I just put your email address, Kiana, into the chat. So Kiana's email is kiana.leveritte@georgiaaudubon.org. So feel free to copy and paste that. And if you have any questions for Kiana, you can email her there. Her email is also on our website, on our staff tab, if you missed this in the chat here. But there are a couple of resources that I want to make sure that everyone has access to. So in the chat, as Kiana was talking, she mentioned Greening Youth Foundation, which is a phenomenal organization for connecting young people to careers in conservation and careers in natural sciences in a variety of fields. And so I put the link to the Greening Youth Foundation into the chat. I would encourage you to check them out. And they provide stipends for you to be able to do those jobs, and even provide professional development funds if you want to go to conferences, and they pay for that. So it's a really great opportunity to be able to get your foot in the door. I also put a link to the Atlanta Urban Ecologist program, which is targeted, as Kiana said, for grades 8 through 12. So it's really targeted to people who are in the high school, middle school age group. And it provides you an opportunity to see different career fields across, particularly in the city of Atlanta. So you do kind of have to be in the more local area to Georgia Audubon, but it's a great opportunity. And I'm also pasting, finally, a link in the chat here that is Georgia Audubon's Conservation Career Resources. And this page will link you to a variety of possible next steps, regardless of where you are in your career. If you're a young person and you're in middle school and you want to learn more about, say, the zoo has lots of volunteer opportunities. If you are in high school and you're looking for opportunities to shadow or to volunteer or to even get paid for an internship, there are links on that page. if you're in college and you're looking for ways to kind of get more information and experience, there are opportunities for every career stage on that page. So I encourage you to check it out so you can learn more. And again, if you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are always thrilled to be able to offer any insights that we can and the resources that we have access to. So Kiana, again, you are phenomenal, and it's an honor to know you and to work with you. Thank you so much for sharing so beautifully both of your advice and your career and your experience. You are phenomenal. And everyone, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at future Conservation Career Series. The next one will be this Thursday at 11 a.m. and I will actually be doing that series and talking a little bit about my career. So feel free if you're interested in joining us for that day. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.